Hey everybody, Thomas Vanderkin here. Super excited. I've got two guys with me. We're going to talk about workstations for a little while. Glenn Tenorio is our channel workstation manager. And then we've also got Mark Holmes. He's North America Performance Workstation Product Manager. Hey guys, thanks for joining me.
Hey Thomas, good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so guys, I got a sample of a P1 Gen 3 from you guys a few weeks ago, put it up on YouTube. It's already got 6,000 views on one video. I did an update comparing the Gen 1 and the Gen 3. It's got another 3,000 views, comments like crazy. So I thought, hey, let's get us together. Let's talk a little bit about this Gen 3. I'll read you guys some of the YouTube comments, and we'll just kind of have a discussion around the ThinkPad P1 Gen 3. Does that make sense?
That sounds perfect. Awesome. Hope we can get these things answered.
So we'll start out. Glenn, you want to just introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So you said I'm the channel workstation specialist. I work with a lot of our large channel partners here in the United States. I work only with our P-Series workstations. So I like to say I live, breathe, talk, and work on these things every single day. So happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, so I'm Mark Holmes. I am the North America workstation product manager. So I cover all of our performance mobile workstations as well as our performance desktop workstations.
So Mark, maybe that's a good place to start. If you cover all of our workstations, the one we're talking about today specifically is the ThinkPad P1 Gen 3. You want to talk a little bit about our lineup of products, kind of where it fits in and kind of what the P1 Gen 3 is and kind of who it's for?
Yeah, absolutely. So the P1 is actually my favorite product in the entire workstation portfolio. And I would say for obvious reasons, but thankfully we're here to talk about that. I love it because you get the best performance and the most lightweight form factor possible. Stepping back to our P52 days, 3 years ago, customers wanted a 15-inch form factor mobile workstation. They wanted the power that the CPU allowed and provided, but they said, give me something more lightweight. And then we have our P1 that's under 4 pounds, fantastic display quality, fantastic performance, and a very lightweight form factor that just really is a premium icing on the top of a workstation portfolio.
So you guys sent me one, which was totally awesome. The only bad part was you took it back. So I've got just to give people a sense of this thing, I've got the P1 Gen 1 here. I use all the time. One polarizing thing on that is there's no num keypad, right? Some people fall in love with that numbers keypad. The P1 Gen 1 doesn't have it. So any thoughts about that? Is that you guys prefer the number keypad, or you like it without the number keypad and keep your mouse in the middle?
Glad I'll let you go first on that one.
Well, man, I'm not a number keypad guy.
Okay.
I think what we find is that there are a distinct set of two people, right? There's the people who want the 10 key, and there's the people who don't. And normally, coming from the thinner, lighter, more sleek, centered look and feel, you're coming from a 13-inch or 14-inch, and being able to get that really, really thin and light form factor with this much power almost necessitated it to be in the center. The more you add keyboards, the less space you have on the inside. So from an engineering standpoint, it made sense. And then also just from a utility, what we're used to using, it also just made sense to have it in the middle. So I'd say it ended up being best of both worlds. And we do have products that have the 15 or the 10 key if necessary. But when we're talking thin and light, I think sleek and simple wins the game, right?
Yeah. Okay, so let's have some fun. So I post these videos on LinkedIn and on YouTube. LinkedIn, everybody's nice, right? Because it's like a resume. You don't get anything but nice comments. On YouTube, it's a lot more fun because people are a little bit more, they can hide behind some of their comments. So,
by the way, Tom, I got the P1 Gen 3 back, by the way. Thanks for giving it back.
I'm a little bitter at the moment, but I'm going to try and control myself. So, okay, so the first question we have here is from a guy somebody called 60 Beats. He says, thanks for uploading these first impressions. I'm about to hit the tap on the buy button, and I'm therefore very keen to read about any additional details you could have, including the screen brightness, reflectivity, quality of the hinges, keyboard feel, fan noise. Lenovo claims that the surface of this version is also not as fingerprint prone.
Okay.
Okay, a lot of questions there.
I'll take a couple of the easy ones there, and I'll leave the hard ones for Mark. So I think when it comes to the screen and the display, I love the P1. I've used the Gen 1. I've used the Gen 2. I have a Gen 3 now. So I've seen them through all of their iterations, and the screens have just continually gotten better and better as panel capability has gotten better. If we're talking about the highest end two screens, the 4K displays, one is OLED, and that's a 500 nit brightness OLED display. To the person who posted that comment, to their point, if we're talking OLED, we're talking the same type of display that you experience on a lot of smartphones, right? Everybody knows what OLED looks like, and it is beautiful. You have absolute blacks. I think you mentioned that in your video. It's really, really hard to get that with any other display technology, nearly impossible. And so you have that, but it is a glossy display. So I know there are some users who don't like the glossy display, and with the touch, you're going to get some fingerprints on the display. So it's a little bit shiny, it's a little bit glossy. Personally, I actually still prefer it. Regarding the other one though, so we still have, if you want the 4K display so you can fit more on the display and you want that resolution, we do have a non-touch matte 4K display with the anti-glare. And the good news there is it's still 100% color calibrated from the factory. You still have your different color profiles that are color accurate for designers and engineers if they need that. And then you actually go up in brightness to a 600 nit display. So you're actually getting brighter. Somebody asked me yesterday, they said, hey, so if I don't get the OLED touch, like, is the display gonna look cheap? And I wish I had one to show them, because it absolutely doesn't. We're talking a super bright, super color accurate, just anti-glare version of that display that's not touch. So that's the long-winded answer to a short question, but I think it made sense. The keyboard I'll answer as well. So if you've ever used a ThinkPad in the past, it's the same keyboard. I think that's probably the simplest answer. So it's everything you'd expect from a ThinkPad keyboard, even to the point where you see the keys kind of dip in a little bit in the middle to cup your fingers. It's amazing if you've ever used one. If you haven't, I recommend it. All right, Mark, I'll let you hit the other points there.
So open questions we have are, what about the hinge, and what about the fan noise? Any thoughts on those topics?
Yeah, so and that's great, because one of the key differences of the P1 is that it actually has a single band hinge compared to the rest of our mobile workstations. The others have two dual hinges, right? So I think that the single hinge just makes it look a lot more sleek. We do rigorous testing in Japan, from over 1,000 cycles of just going back and forth, making sure that's very reliable. From a fan noise perspective, we did something a little bit different with this generation. So when you talk about a workstation, you talk about max performance, and we've learned from customer feedback is that customers want to be able to maximize performance instead of going through throttling issues. And obviously, as Lenovo, we make sure we listen to our customers. So this year with the Gen 3, we've enabled enhanced power sliders that allows you to have maximum performance, which is going to, unfortunately raise that decibel level from a fan noise perspective, but you still have the control over toggling it. So if you want more performance, you're going to have a little bit more fan noise. But if you want to limit that fan noise and still have maximum performance, you have the ability to adjust that in the power slider from an operating system point of view.
And I think one of the things that I'm really interested in there, and it makes a lot of sense for me, if I'm sitting at my desk, the PC or the laptop, it actually knows that it's sitting on a desk and it's not moving. So it'll adjust the fan based on that. And if you're carrying it around or you have it on your lap and it's moving a little bit, it'll actually recognize, hey, it's probably on a lap right now. So it'll adjust the fans based on that. So what Mark was saying, if you have it in ultra performance mode, which is just the battery slider all the way to the right, I think it actually says best performance, but it's under the covers, it's ultra performance. That turns it to 100% everything. It's basically like beast mode. It no longer does lap mode. It no longer turns anything down. And you can absolutely hear the fans. And the point there is, if you hear the fans blowing air out of the machine, it's for a reason. It's because
it's trying,
right? Like you get the heat out of the machine.
Yeah.
Your machine performs better because heat's the worst enemy. If heat stays in there, everything throttles. So to me, when I hear that fan pumping up, I just like to think that I'm doing good work because it's getting all the heat out that I'm creating, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. If the fan is silent, that's a problem, right? So it's actually a good sign that you hear the fan noise.
I think on the other notes, like right now, I'm using a P1 for this video, and it is 100% silent even on a video call, because doing just this video, you know, it's not actually really pressuring this processor or graphics card that much because it's so powerful. It's using a very small percentage of what it's capable of, so it's nearly silent. I wouldn't even be able to tell that it's on right now, to be honest.
And Glenn, one more thing about that, because you mentioned when it's mobile, it throttles the fan noise. So that's actually called our cool and quiet laptop mode, or CQL mode for short. And we actually changed the settings in the BIOS default when the P1 Gen 3 ships. So if you want, CQL mode will actually be disabled, so you don't have any throttling when you're up and about, moving in and about. So if you still want that maximum performance, you can keep that CQL mode off, or if you can toggle it on if you choose to do so. But that was other additional customer feedback that we got from the Gen 2. So we made that change this year as well.
Awesome.
So let's talk a little bit about this processor. It's a Intel H processor, is that right?
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about the processor, what that means, how it's different than the non-H Intel, and then we'll get a little bit more into if it's actually overclocked or not, because that's a lot of big questions.
Okay. I'd say, Mark, I'll start high level once again, and then I'll let you dive deeper. Are you okay with that?
Perfect.
So I'd say in the laptop space, there's really two flavors of processors. There's your low wattage processors, and we're talking Intel processors, right? There's your low wattage Intel processors, and there's your high wattage Intel processors. The low wattage are what you're going to see in our X1 Carbon, or our thin and light, you know, T14, or even our P14S. The thinner, lighter machines that only need a very small power supply, those are going to be what's called the U series processors. So the i7-8565U, that designates the low power processors. Now, when you're talking performance machines, and this is in the gaming world, a lot of the time the gaming laptops will have the H series processors, or your workstations will have the H series processors. The difference between the processor then are, outside of just higher wattage, are more cores, higher base clock speed. So even if you look at an i5 H series, it actually has a higher clock speed than an i7 U series, and the same amount of cores. So if you put an i7 U series next to an i5 H series, the i5 H series will actually outperform it, right? So it's a very different class of processor, and it sits right between the U series and the desktops. So that's what we have here in the P1, and that's why it's so impressive to be able to have something as thin as those other notebooks, 18 millimeters thin, but have the super powerful processor that gives you up to 8 cores at 2.8 gigs, 8 cores or 2.8 gig clock speed. I mean, that's huge in a laptop this thin. So that's the high level, and I'm not sure if we can go deeper if that makes sense.
Yeah. What are you going to add, Mark?
Yeah, so I like to think of the H at the end of the processor as just high and high performance, right? So if you really want the maximum performance in a mobile device, you want to make sure that processor has an H on the end of it. And what I do like about the processor offering this year as compared to last is that many customers know and love the i9, right? Delivers 8 cores, top-notch performance. Intel created a new 8-core processor, which is an i7-10875H. So it delivers 8-core performance at just a little bit difference of speed, slower-wise. But still, for those that want that core count frequency there, you still have that delivered with an i7-10875H without having to jump up to an i9. So you have that two options there, which I think we're going to find a lot of customers will really appreciate that as an offering.
I totally agree. To add on there, the difference in performance, I think is so the difference in cost significantly outweighs the difference in performance is what I'm trying to say. So the difference in cost is big. i9's They're expensive. We all know that across the board. i7s are less. So this i7 8-core is only 1/10 of a gig slower. It's nearly insignificant in terms of performance, unless you're looking for every inch you can get. But for 1/10 of a gig and the same core count, same cache, I mean, it's a real good competitor for a pretty good drop in price. And that's available in this one. In the
Absolutely.
P1. Is the i9 available also, or do you have to step up to a different laptop to get that?
i9's available as well. Yep.
Oh,
There's
okay.
actually a real good spread of processors here, and Intel really made more options for us this year, and every option is available here, right? So from the 4-core i5 H series, there's 3 6-core options. There's a non-vPro i7, a vPro i7, and then there's a Xeon, which is actually very similar performance to that vPro i7, slightly more. And then you have 3 8-core options. You have the i7 we talked about, the i9, and then you have a Xeon. The real difference in the Xeons, and the reason you would step up there from a cost perspective, is if you needed ECC memory. They are the only processors that support ECC. But if you're an engineer, a developer, or you're in finance, ECC memory is critical. And to have a thin and light machine that supports ECC memory, that's a huge win. So that's the processor spread for this machine.
So let's talk a little bit about, is this thing really overclocked or not? Because that got a lot of feedback in my YouTube video. So is it overclocking, or what's actually happening here when you turn it all the way up to best performance mode?
It is not overclocking. So that is something that we'll get quite often, and it's something that is synonymous with some of the processors that are available. But we want to make sure that we are still maintaining our reliability and longevity standards that we pride ourselves on as Think reliability. So we do not offer overclocking support within our devices.
Yeah. And another question was, if you put it into this best performance mode and it's running, all systems go all the time, does that affect my warranty? And is it still the same kind of expectations for, is this thing probably going to last as long running in that mode?
Yeah, does not affect your warranty, right? So this is our gift to our customers after listening and hearing that you need the best performance. This is still within the parameters of our innovation engineering, so that is absolutely still going to be covered with the new ultra performance mode.
And if you're running an ultra performance and it breaks, that's what the warranty's for. But it shouldn't. There was a study done. This was the beginning of this year, actually. The study, it was a third-party company that studies reliability in machines. And I think you actually alluded to this in one of your other videos. But they took the largest workstation manufacturers in the world, so Lenovo being one of them, and then our direct competitors as the other ones. And what they found was that based on repair rates on machines, reported by thousands of CIOs, the repair rates on Lenovo over a 3-year period were 20% less. Right. So the way that I always talk about that is, if I was going to go buy a truck and I said, hey, listen, this truck breaks down 20% less of the time, that's a lot, right? So those are the reliability standards that Mark was talking about. We have to stick to that, because that's our story, and we're sticking to it. So we have to stick to that. So when we design something and we say, hey, this is max performance, that's why the fans turn all the way up, to get that heat out, so we're not ruining components, so that we can do that for 5 years straight. Because you could literally get a 5-year warranty on this thing, and it covers every component on the inside besides the battery, which you can cover for up to 3 years with a free replacement. So it is a pretty cool thing that we can do here when you're talking long-term, non-stop performance in a machine like this.
And the reliability is a big factor in my customers' decisions on what they buy, because you figure if you buy a truck, your odds of you being the unlucky one, you're rolling the dice. But if you buy 1,000 of these laptops, it's going to be over a 3-year period, 200 more of them that are going to fail. That's a big difference, right, for an enterprise customer. So. Exactly.
It's a huge difference, I mean, and failure means that now you got to get a new unit, and now you have to wait for it. Now you have to re-image it, and it's not just a few hours of them being down. It's sometimes a couple days, a few days, and that's for machines like this, that's mission critical stuff.
let's talk about this ISV certs. So
Okay.
I know a lot of customers buy these because they need software certification. So we'll talk about that in a second. But what I'm finding is that a lot of customers are buying these just because their current laptop they have today that worked fine as a i5, 2-year-old kind of, let's say they're using a T480 or something. Now that we're all in kind of COVID world, these collaboration apps, Teams we're on today, but whatever you're using, Slack, Google Hangouts, Zoom, whatever, they are incredibly processor intensive. So they're finding that they can't do their collaboration call and use the laptop for other activities. So they're like, hey, let's just upgrade. It's important enough to keep our employees productive. We'll give them a workstation class machine, even though they're not requiring the certifications for it. Are you seeing that, or is that just in my customer base?
I'm absolutely seeing that across the board, and when I say across the board, it is truly everybody. It's funny that as we kind of move forward in technology, that we get more complaints from just people. When I say complaints, it's people saying, hey, my laptop's not working like it used to, and this is just industry knowledge across the board, right? And the reason that's happening is, to your point, all these new applications, they're utilizing GPU so much more than they ever used to, and they're utilizing the processor so much more. There's another study by Lakeside, and they found that the new versions of applications versus versions from 5 or 10 years ago, so Office 2016, for example, utilizes GPU 1,100% more of the time than it did in previous versions. Like that's crazy. And what you see with that, if you have a machine without a GPU, it's using the integrated graphics, it's using memory, and it's using processor. And now when you're trying to have 10 Chrome tabs open and 3 Excel spreadsheets and Outlook, and you're doing a Teams call, and by the way, something else happens, you start to bog down because you're maxing out the machine. And a workstation really eliminates that, which is why me, even just as a channel sales guy, I use a workstation because I love big spreadsheets and lots of Chrome tabs, right? Mm-hmm. So once again, long-winded answer to a question you can tell I'm very passionate about, because I don't know if you could ever put a normal non-workstation back in my hands, I would scream and yell.
Yeah, in that same note, Tom, I think we also got to look at the fact that in the times of COVID, a lot of users that were in the office were using desktops for their everyday usage, and they were also performance users. They were power users, and now going back into the home and working from home, they're not carrying their big desktops back home and using 1,000-watt power supplies in their home, right, driving up the energy bill. So the best thing you could even go to from a mobile perspective is going to be a mobile workstation, right? That H processor is going to be the closest to a desktop replacement. So we definitely see a migration going from the desktop users that were using more power heavy stuff, or just wanted to be able to do their everyday usage at a faster rate. We see them migrating to mobile workstations for that exact reason, because it's the closest thing they can get from that power delivery.
Do all of our P-class workstation laptops have a graphics card in them?
Every single one. Now, with the caveat, and this is for a very specific use case, right? So they all come with a graphics card. Some, like the P1, actually, you can configure it without a graphics card, CPU only with integrated graphics, and that's very specifically designed for our customers who aren't really developing anything that needs the Quadro GPU, but they really need the core count. So folks that are doing a lot of virtualization, folks that are doing development, right? So developers love the integrated graphics machine, because they don't need a 4 gig T2000 Quadro card, right? Unless we're playing games on the side or something, but outside of that, it's not needed. So it's a really big cost saving measure for organizations to be able to remove it if necessary. And we can remove it on the P1, on the P15, and on the P15V, which is another machine that we just launched this year.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it seems a little crazy to remove it, though. Like you said, I think these Teams calls, like I'm using X1 Carbon. As soon as I open Teams, my CPU pegs and my fan is like completely, maxed out, and it starts you know, it handles it, but it is pegged trying to do the team scale. And then if I try to do anything else, you know, it's noticeable. So I think the graphics card makes a big difference for all this collaboration.
Yeah, I had at this point with the GPU acceleration, I had a spreadsheet open yesterday that had 10 million filled cells. 10 million. I tried to open it on, I have a T480S with 8 gigs of memory and an i7, and it wouldn't do anything. So it opened it, but then I tried to make a change, and it literally wouldn't make the change. So I opened it on my P1 with an i7, 6-core i7, 32 gigs of memory, and a T1000 GPU, and it just smooth sailing through the entire spreadsheet. It's amazing when you actually use it and experience it and realize that the stuff that you used to wait for, when you don't have to wait for that, you work much more efficiently. Right?
Okay, so anybody who's made it this far is definitely a Lenovo geek and fanboy, right? So some of the questions now are going to get really geeky. So Gatecrashers wants to know what's going on with the P1, P15, P15S, T15G, and there's probably others you couldn't think of with all these different graphics card options. And it seems like we have a lot of products right in one spot with a 15-inch screen and a graphics card, right? So what's going on with Lenovo there, and what's the difference?
Yeah, so I'll take that one, and it's a very solid question, and it's one that I obviously have to tackle as a PM. One thing I will say is that going from where we were less than 10 years ago as a workstation business unit, right? We just had 2 or 3 offerings in our W series for all the Lenovo lifers out there that remember those products. Now we're up to 8 mobile workstation offerings, which is great, and they all have their niche, right? They all have their predominant solution that they're all targeting in one way, shape, or another. So there is a necessity for them. When you talk about the 15S, you're talking about the standard performance user that needs that Ultrabook battery life and enhanced performance from a standard laptop. But as you get up the stack, one thing that we saw going from a P53S last year is customers that wanted a stronger performance from a P53S had to jump up to a P1. And that was a considerable cost jump, right? You get that performance, you get the elite premium body of a P1, but customers just wanted the H-level processing that we've been talking about, during this time. And quite frankly, there was a gap there, right? We needed to deliver that H-level processing without saying you need to jump up to X when you just needed one particular part. So that P15V that is new to our portfolio in 2020 is that gap filler right there, where you jump up in performance, but you don't need that graphics of a T1000 or a T2000 in the P1. You're sitting right there in between there, so you get the best of both worlds for performance without needing graphics. Now, we talk about P15, and I'll tie in T15G in there as well. So one thing I love about the P15 this year is that we completely did a clean sheet redesign with the motherboard. So we implemented a daughter card GPU design, and what that means in layman's terms is that instead of having the GPU tied to the CPU, prime example is if you wanted a Xeon and a P53, you had to have an RTX 5000 last year. No more of that nonsense, right? If you want a Xeon and a T1000, you have that pairing. If you want an i5 and an RTX 5000, even though I don't think you would get the most out of it, you have that pairing. So you have that full autonomy over flexibility, a complete 4x multiplier of configuration and flexibility this year with the P15. Now let's get to the T15G. Customers see the P15, they see the power, they see the flexibility, up to 120 gigabytes of RAM, and they say, Lenovo, when are you going to deliver us a GeForce RTX design? Where is it? I see you have it. You see you have it in the Legion, but I want the ThinkPad reliability. I want this commercially available and ready for my users. They may be doing VR usage, AR, gaming development. That's what the T15G is. So you have the body of the P15, you have the engineering, the innovation of the P15, but with the GeForce RTX Super Max Q cards in the 2070 and 2080, and you have that in the T15G. So they're very similar, and by just naming themselves, but the T15G is going to be very similar to the P15, but with that graphics capabilities.
Got it. So that's a good transition to ISV certs. You want to talk about what ISV certs are? And then I'm also curious, does that mean that the T15, because it starts with a T instead of a P, does that mean it doesn't have the ISV certs?
Yeah, so I'll take that one if you don't mind. So the ISV certs, and once again, in layman terms, very simply put, is if you're using a very specific design application, for example, like AutoCAD, you need a graphics card in that machine, or you need a machine that is certified by Autodesk. So when you call Autodesk for support, one of their first questions is, hey, what machine are you using? Because that's a very critical point in how they give you support, right? Now, if you're using a certified machine, it's much easier for them to support you because they know that it works. So certification basically means that that software company has tested and certified that this machine and this graphics card work on their software. So if you're using one of those applications, it makes sense to get an ISV certified machine. Now, the whether it's a T series or P series isn't really what defines the certification. It has to do with the fact that our P series workstation team works with these software vendors to make sure that they're certified. Now, GeForce, you'll find, isn't going to be certified. Quadro cards are certified, and the reason there is that the driver set behind the Quadro cards is much more long-term, stable, and reliable. Just like a commercially available machine that lasts for a year, 2 years in life cycle, the Quadro cards have a very similar driver profile. So you're talking driver updates every 6 to 12 months rather than every week like a GeForce card, right? Now, that said, we fully understand that there are needs for GeForce, which is why we provide it as an option. But I think that the ISV certification is very important, and you'll find that because of the stable drivers, a lot of the time the actual real-world performance of the Quadro cards tends to be better. Your rendering tends to be less choppy. Your output tends to be just smoother in general, and you don't run into issues that are driver based a lot of the time. So that's the question.
Oh, Glenn, we lost you. I think you went on mute there randomly.
Crazy. I literally wasn't touching anything. I just went on mute.
2020 problems.
Yeah.
That's Casper, the P1 ghost.
One thing I want to add on to that that Glenn touched on that I think is really important is we have a dedicated team here in Raleigh that is solely dedicated to working with our ISVs to making sure that our machines are tested to run comfortably on that software. So when you talk about all the Autodesk suites, when you talk about the Adobe Premiere Pro suites, SolidWorks, CATIA, ANSYS, the whole 9 yards, we make sure that we send them these units to test on their software applications and make sure they run. And we spend so much time and energy doing that to make sure that these are ISV certified and run your everyday applications.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think we're winding down our time here, but before I end, I always like to ask, what else are you working on? What's cool? Anything coming up you can tell us about, or what do you want to end with that we can really get excited about?
We are continuously listening to our customers, and we are continuously just keeping our ear out to what customers want to see in our next product. So what I will say is that from an announcement standpoint, we may not be done in 2020 from a mobile workstation product portfolio.
Glenn's got a twinkle in his eye. I feel like there's something there.
No, I would say, and this is by no means like specific to any product, but it's the way that just being a part of Lenovo and seeing how hard our R&D and engineering team are working to develop new products. Mark said he said it a few times. We're constantly listening to our customers, and when he says that, it's true. We actually have large customers, small customers come in and have these meetings where they tell us what they want, and then we take that and we build based off of that, and we change based off of that. We pivot. That is true. I've been a part of it. It's amazing to see. Now, what we're always trying to do, of course, and this is what you can expect going forward. We're trying to get more powerful, thinner, and lighter. Like that's the mobile workstation MO, right? Can we get more power? Can we do the work better? And can we do it in a thinner, lighter form factor? So that's always the goal. And I think if you can expect anything in the future, it's going to be one of those three things. It's going to be faster, it's going to be thinner, it's going to be lighter. One of those three things, because we already have the reliability story down. So we're trying to keep that consistent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed our time together. I think it's flown by, but I appreciate it. Maybe next time you need me to unbox another product, just let me know. I love doing it. So I think that's it.
I want to throw a high five to anybody who lasted through all of this. That's
exactly. Send Glenn and Mark an email, I guess, if you made it. So
yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thomas, thank you so much.
Thanks, Thomas.